Hey guys, what's going on? Another week, another random video coming right at you live here from the House of Randomness. And I have been doing a lot of talking and a lot of thinking over the last week over how far things have come in the last 20 years, and some of it's a little spooky and some of it's actually really kind of cool. What's all changed? Well, I'm sure you probably already know, but I'll sit down and explain it with you for just a little bit, so stick around. So I was doing some talking with some of my friends, both in person and online, as far as, what's all changed in the last 20-ish years. And I can remember back when I was first getting into computers, and I've actually been kind of more into computers since about the early 80s, back when I first got my taste of an Apple II. And the Apple II in those days, well, it was really a fun thing. It was a novelty. It was something that I never really had a chance to play with before, because I had seen things like, Pong consoles and, up until like the Atari came out. But after a while, I started seeing computers more for consumer grade, because, before those days, they were mainly for like, government offices, universities, that kind of thing. So when the consumer grades started coming out, it was an exciting time, really. But one of the first computers I ever got to toy around with was an Apple II, and it's actually one of the first things I ever started learning how to type on, because before then it was all just hunt and peck, and well, you know how that goes. It's very slow. Thankfully, I also took 2 years of typing in high school, which really helped, because nowadays I type really fast and people are like, how do you do that? Well, I have 2 years of high school to thank for that one. So what's all changed? And I had talked about it with some people, and one of the things that was brought to my attention was magnetic drives, magnetic output drives. And the ones I was shown, it was like, wow, those things were really cool. But it kind of reminded me of something that I had seen before after looking at some pictures of it. Reminded me of looking at these things. What are these? These aren't compact discs. No, what these are is what's called a mini disc. And it's about, yay big, and it goes in a special kind of reader. And in some ways, it kind of reminds me of the 3.5-inch floppy, because it's got the little door here that when you put it in the reader, it'll slide open and you can read to the optical disc. And this is actually the only one I have, and the only reason why I have it is because growing up, my mom and I listened to a lot of David Bowie. I mean, tons and tons. We watched tons of David Bowie. We were like kind of Bowie super fans back in the day. Kind of still are in a way. But this was Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And it's the only one that she really picked up. So when I inherited it, it's like, okay, I'm just going to hang on to this because it's kind of a cool sentimental thing. What other things did we do back in the day that were really cool? Well, my very first actual PC, the actual PC type version, the one that we're kind of used to now, wasn't until about 92, 93. Before then, I was using basically kind of like toy versions back in the time, because the first one I got was the Mattel Electronics Aquarius computer, and I thought for what I was paying for, I thought I was going to get something useful. And as it turns out, it was very bare bones. It had 2K of RAM. Yes, I can hear you laughing. This is back in the 80s, so don't judge me on that one too harshly. But it came with 2K RAM. There was nothing to write it to. It had no tape drive, no disk drive, no nothing. So basically, just played with it, and then when you shut it off, it's kind of start over. The first one that I actually had that I was able to save stuff to was the Commodore VIC-20. And the VIC-20 back in the day was a really, really popular computer. It was very popular for families who wanted something that was entry level and could do basic functions and some games. And I did have a VIC-20. I hooked up to a small TV, because I had color TV at the time. So whew, we had full color. Go figure. We had full 16 colors. Yes, back then it was a lot. But I digress. But when you look back at what we had, it was actually really good. Now, granted, not long after they came out with the Commodore 64, which had smaller characters on the screen, because when you looked at the comparison between the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64, the character size was smaller. You could fit more on the screen. And I actually had a friend who had a Commodore 64 who had the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive. And this was a big deal. You know, it was a pretty big deal to be actually able to afford a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive on your computer, because, you know, not everybody could afford it. And those who were well-to-do off, you know, actually went out and got actual IBM PCs. So, you know, fast forward to about, you know, 93-ish, and then I got my first PC. It was a 286 DX25 megahertz. Not gigahertz, this was 25 megahertz. Slow as a box of rocks. Well, back then it was okay. It didn't really do a whole lot because it didn't really even have enough RAM to install Windows 3.1 on, although I did shoehorn it on there, and it ran kinda, sort of, but not really. So then I ended up doing an upgrade to a 386 DX33, which is a moderate upgrade. Had a whopping 500 megabyte hard drive, and that was huge. I mean, man, how are we ever going to fill up 500 megabytes? But after a while, even that got to be too slow because I couldn't play the games I wanted to play. I wanted to play games like Star Wars TIE Fighter, Seventh Guest, Delta V, and Cyber War, which is based on the movie Lawnmower Man. So I went and upgraded again. I went out and got, you know, I upgraded to a 46 DX2 66 megahertz. Now, the comparison between 33 and 66 megahertz back in the day was pretty significant. You could play games wonderfully. So I was able to play Star Wars TIE Fighter and be able to play it reasonably well. I mean, it played really, really nicely. Granted, I did not have a very good controller to play it, so I sucked at it a lot. But I still played it because it was one of those games that was fun to be the bad guy. Because, you know, everybody got to play the good guy. And you didn't really get a chance to whole lot to play the bad guy. But Star Wars TIE Fighter actually able to do that. And thankfully they have the special edition on Steam now. So yeah, I'm going to rewind time a little bit and go back and play TIE Fighter again. And maybe not suck at it this time. So other than that, you know, got the mini disc drives. We went through the VHS years. Some of us still hang on to our VHS tapes. I know I do. I still have quite a few of them. Primarily because I don't have everything on digital or disc. So it's still a viable type of medium. Games have come a long way. Granted, some of the classic games, like this one, are still really awesome. And this was actually a reissue of the Sega CD version. Lunar the Silver Star. Wonderful game. Absolutely wonderful. And the reason why I bring this game up is this is probably like a real top tier example of just because a game is old does not necessarily make it bad. I have a lot of games in my collection from, you know, many years ago, before some of you were probably even born, that, you know, still bring back good memories. I still like them. I still play them, and they're still awesome. One of the games that I played for years was a game Universal brought out. Not Universal Studios, but there's another company called Universal back in '82. Brought out a little known game called Mr. Do. And what Mr. Do basically is you play as a clown in an orchard being pursued by monsters, and you clear the level by either clearing all the cherries in the field or by killing all the monsters. And there's several ways of doing it. And it's a lot of detail to go into right now. So what I'll probably do is I may actually do an overview of I think there was like 4 or 5 games in the Mr. Do franchise, because you have Mr. Do, Mr. Do's Castle, Mr. Do's Wild Ride, and then you had, well, actually there's 4, because the 4th one was Do Run Run, not related to Sean Cassidy by any stretch of the imagination, but that one was kind of a weird one. So that one was kind of cool too. What else has changed? I mean, you look at how computers and games have come just since '93, and you look at things how they were back then. I mean, I challenge you, go back and look at some of the games of the early 90s when computers really started coming into their own in the mainstream. And now keep in mind, if you wanted a high-end computer back in those days, you would get a system that was about $3,000 that if you were to buy the exact same thing today, you would probably find it in a flea market somewhere for less than $100. It's changed that much. Shoot, this system right here. This one was just over $1,600. This thing does hundreds, if not thousands of times faster than the $3,000 computers I saw back in those days. It's come a long ways. So, I may go back and do some older game retrospects to show you some of the games that I saw over the years and the ones I found that were memorable. So I kind of, give you a showcase of what I found that was really cool. So if there's something that you remember that you want to see, reviewed on here, by all means, drop it down in the comments. I'll take a look at it. I loved all the arcade games from the late 70s all the way onward. I'm not as young as I may look. Well, maybe I do. I'm not sure. But, that's a topic for a whole nother discussion. So I just thought I'd give you something a little random. I am still working on some game reviews. I'm actually downloaded a new game that I found on Steam, because what I'm doing is I'm looking through the stuff that's on special and finding the stuff that's like, that looks kind of interesting. Let's take a look at it and see how it runs. And then what I'll do is I'll give you my opinions of it, show you how it runs on this system, because it's the only system I have, and then give you some, how performance reviews, opinions, that kind of thing. So until next time, live a little random every single day as often as you can, and we will catch you next time.